All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I'm going to get into today, I'm calling Divorce May Not Be the Answer. So if you know anything about me, I teach a program called Mastering Self-Confidence. It's really about, to help men find the woman or women of their dreams, even if they've been through a bad breakup or divorce. My podcast, I cover a lot of different things. In this one, I really kind of want to get into divorce specifically, not even about breaking up, or any of that. It's just divorce in general, most likely if you were married and you had kids, or maybe even if you didn't have kids. Maybe you got a puppy and a kitty or whatever the case may be. And I'm divorced. My parents were divorced. And, I grew up in a divorced household at a very young age when that was not that common, actually. So I've been involved with divorce for a long time, I guess you could say. When I was growing up, most of my family members were all Catholics, and they didn't believe in divorce. But my grandmother, not my great-grandmother from Italy, but my grandmother was divorced as well. So I spent a lot of time with my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. But my mother and grandmother were both divorced women. And, I got to learn a different perspective being with women on how they see divorce, and then what I went through as well, getting divorced. And I've also now been around other people that have been divorced because it's a lot more common now than ever. And the one thing, though, I see or have talked to a lot of people who've gotten divorces, some love it, and they think it's the best thing that's ever happened to them. That goes for men and women. Some people just feel like, God bless, I call it cutting the anchor or throwing, or just, whatever. Putting the anchor back in the boat, or more or less just getting rid of the anchor is really what I call it. And then just being free again. Because I think a lot of people are with people they're not supposed to be with. They may have been with them in the past and it's worked out, but as time went on and evolved, they both evolved and they both have gone in two different directions, regardless if you had kids or not. And that's my situation that I was in. We just were two totally different people from when we met to when we got a divorce. And that's not a bad thing. It's horrible when you're going through it, because especially if you have children. It's really hard getting a divorce, obviously. And you don't really understand it until you go through it, but also at the same time, no divorce is like someone else's. Nobody has the exact divorce because nobody has the exact life. Nobody's the exact person. Even though people are like, oh, I know what you went through. This happened and that happened and this. But the truth was, no, we really don't know what happened. We didn't live in your house. We don't have the same type of kids you have, or, pets or lifestyle. We don't all make the same money. It's different. We're all different. But now I'm turning, now I'm middle-aged, big time. I'm 50 years old. And seeing all these different types of people going through divorce, I think a lot of times, like I was just saying, it could be the best thing for a lot of people. But I also think that a lot of people get a divorce that regret it on both sides. And I get it a lot of times. Somebody cheated on you, someone lied, someone stole from you, blah, 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 blah. And and believe me, I've been around a lot of people that have been divorced because I have a massive family, kind of a lot of friends, that have stuck together for their kids, stuck together for money purposes, that have been miserable for decades. So I understand that component as well, as far as being forced to stay together, which is a horrific environment. You're basically a prisoner, which I can't stand that either. But I know about that as well, so let's just get that cleared. But I'm talking about people sometimes that were married and they're having problems. And and I'm not going to get involved if they cheated, they didn't, or whatever the other person did to them, because let's face it, a lot of times one hurts the other. Or sometimes you're just, you're growing apart at that point in time, but you have children. What I do think most people should do, and this is just my advice to them, and you don't have to do it, is get separated. It was a thing years ago you heard more about. In the 70s and 80s, you heard they were separated more. Now it seems like it kind of goes from marriage to divorce, at least that I see. But I do think a lot of people that are married, that are trying to figure things out, that are thinking about getting a divorce, Because let's face it, a lot of times by the time you get to divorce, you're already 2-3 years miserable. It's not like you both wake up that morning and you go, you know what, next week we're going to get divorced, or next month we should get divorced. No, things have been going on that aren't right from one perspective or another. Somebody's been unhappy, or maybe you're both unhappy. But I do think, I really do, if people are thinking of getting divorced and they just separate for a while. Now, I think one of the reasons why they don't separate nowadays more than ever is because they're afraid if they separate, the other one's going to fool around with somebody else, and then you're going to lose all the respect for them, and then you're going to want a divorce anyways. I get it. It's a hard hit. And I'm not recommending that, someone should do that. Or like if you get separated, it's a free-for-all. You're not married anymore, or you're married, but it's kind of an open relationship while you're separated. It's kind of a hall pass situation. If that's what you want to do, that's on you. Whatever. But throw all the bullshit out. Forget about sex, right? Forget about all that nonsense. You sometimes, I believe, just need a break from one another. And it could be you may need it for a month, 2 months, 6 months, maybe a year, just to figure some things out. Because I think a lot of people go from being married and then wanting a divorce. Like I said, they get to divorce, and I think sometimes, not always, a lot of times they regret that decision. They may have jumped the gun, especially if they have kids. They won't ever admit it. In my case, that's not the case. I'm not going to lie. I think the best thing for me was to get a divorce. But I also think, I was just saying that's what was best for me. But other people, I don't necessarily always think that's the best for them. I think some people just at different times in their life start acting kind of goofy. And I don't know if it's a midlife crisis. I don't know if it's social media, or if one's getting pissed off because they're jealous at that moment, or whatever the case may be. But, sometimes if you're thinking about getting a divorce and you separate from one another, again, you truly start to figure out, do I miss that person? Am I willing to now evolve or change for that person? Or do I like, being single again? Or when you're separated again, do I like being alone more? Do I like having my kids, go to the mother, go to the father, the grandparent, the whole situation? Because I don't think a lot of people understand after they get a divorce how complicated it really becomes. And it's very hard. It's not only hard on the couple, it's hard on, the kids, it's hard on the grandparents, it's kind of hard on your friends, which whatever. You may say it doesn't matter. It kind of does, because if you got a lot of good relationships with a lot of friends and you're used to being, in couples all the time, it definitely changes that environment. No matter what you say, people are going to pick sides. Then you have cousins, other aunts, other uncles, all these people. It changes the entire dynamic. And you don't realize it, especially if it's your first divorce, how things are going to end up. And they're going to end up very complicated a lot of times. You don't know it because you're still living in the same house together. And then all of a sudden you decide to get a divorce and someone gets an apartment. Usually someone stays, or you both sell a home, whatever, you go your separate ways very quickly. And I think the first few months or 6 months or a year, it's kind of like, oh, thank you, God. Like, I don't have to come home at night if I don't want to. I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have this or that. But then the other component comes in, which is finances. That's, that is something that's going to be much different. And also just spending time with your kids as a unit compared to separately. That's much harder. Holidays, much harder. Spending time with both grandparents, much harder. And, a lot of people, I think, don't also realize when going through a divorce how you become attached to the other side of the family a lot more than you'd like to admit. My ex-in-laws were wonderful to me. I didn't necessarily hang out with my ex-in-laws as far as brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws. So I'm not going to lie, that wasn't a big deal for me. But let me get some water here. But I think, and I'll just say from my end, when I got a divorce, my ex-wife was extremely close with my side of the family. And I have hundreds of cousins, and my ex-wife was with me at a very young age and grew with them from like a teenage girl, literally, to a woman. And they all love her, miss her. I sometimes say they'd rather swipe me for her. But, the truth is, I think it was hard on my ex-wife at the beginning. I think she's fine now, but it was really hard on my family as well. Now, in my case, like I said, my divorce worked out for me, and I think that was the best thing for me, for sure. But I think a lot of other couples, they don't want to admit again that they really do. It could be your brother-in-law or sister-in-law you're very close with. You may love your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, whatever the case may be. You may love enjoying doing a lot of things with them. And for the most part, that changes. And I don't think a lot of people, again, realize the impact that has. But I think the biggest impact out of everything, and when getting a divorce, is when, or whoever you're with, they start dating somebody else, and then that person's going to be around your kids, and eventually they may marry them or may end up living with them. That's a pretty, it's a big pill to swallow. And I think a lot of men especially don't realize that. I think a lot of men are like, thank God, get me out of this divorce. And then all of a sudden, their ex-wife is dating somebody they're not comfortable with, especially if they have kids. Or the other thing as well is, not only that, say one, you get a divorce and one wants to move to another state, another city, another country. All this is something that's very real. And again, when you're getting a divorce, the only thing a lot of times I think a lot of people are thinking about is like, I hate this person, or I'm sick of this person, or not even hate each other, I just don't get along with this person. I don't like what they do. I'm just burnt out. I've been with them too long, or they just do a lot of stupid shit. Maybe, again, separating, maybe going to counseling, but give it 6 months, a year. Give it some time to breathe. As you know, a lot of times, and I talk even in the workplace, a lot of times you think your job sucks, or something sucks at work, the people suck, whatever your issue is, then you quit, right? You leave. You may go to another job. That job sometimes is worse than the one you had. Or you quit your job and you go back and go, you know what? I really miss those people. I really loved them. I was very comfortable there with them. But you didn't know that. You just looked at all the misery while you were in it. You're like so deep in the shit, you don't even realize how bad it stunk, I call it. But sometimes relationships are like that. And if you plan on being married for the rest of your life, that's what you signed up originally for. That's probably not going to be the case, maybe. But you may go through times in your life that you just need a break from this person. That doesn't mean you're going to leave or separate from each other and then run out and start cheating, or that you want to cheat on them. Some do want to be with other men or other women or whatever the case may be. But a lot of times I think people sometimes need a break from one another just to get a breather. And maybe do some things where they didn't want to answer to the other person, or just, experiment, just being alone for a while again, maybe, or just spending time with their kids separately, not always having to be a unit. Because I will say, and my situation was much different. I was always with my kids, and my ex-wife was very, work-orientated. And we did things as a unit, and I did things very separate. And I was fortunate like that. But I do see a lot of married couples that seem to like they have to always do everything together. And I think sometimes that can burn each other out. Now, that doesn't mean you don't split the kids up. But I do think sometimes having to always do everything, and it could include vacations, it could include birthdays, it includes everything. I think when sometimes people do get a divorce, the one thing they kind of look forward to is just spending time with their kids separately and not having to answer for the other person. Now, what's interesting about that is that may just be a phase, I believe, a lot of times. You just, again, are going through a certain phase to say, this is what I want to do now. But then, like I said, 6 months, a year later, you're like, you know what, I've already done all these things with it. I kind of miss my, my husband, or doing, two is when you separate and you're both living in totally different conditions, you both start to realize, I think, when you're married, especially like, wow, I didn't realize my wife did all these things for me when I was married. Because I could say that about me when I first got divorced. I was shocked. I didn't realize all the things she did for me. And then on the other, the woman maybe, wow, I felt so much safer when he was here. And he did this for me. He did that. I didn't realize all the things he did for me. I also felt safer. I also realized, even if you both separate and start dating other people, you may run across people that are kind of nuts, that may be verbally abusing you, physically abusing you. I don't know. May drink more, may end up doing drugs. Sometimes you look back and go, holy shit, I didn't realize how I really had it. I had it a lot better than I thought I did. I just probably had to work out some things. And I'm just here to tell you is just be very aware of that. If you're getting ready for a divorce or you want a divorce. I get it. But please take time to really think it through. And I think just being separated for a while, but not separating to the point where I think a lot of people separate from one another. And then it's almost like they want to, sometimes they just get, the other one gets hurt and vice versa. They don't even mean to hurt the other person. And I think social media really can have a big kind of, I guess, a big part of that, especially if you're on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever the case may be. Because if you separate and you do start dating somebody and you're still married and they're with someone and they're partying or they're drinking, or you could just see that they're with other people, it kind of destroys you. And then you're finally like, F this person maybe, or whatever. But a lot of times that may not always be the case. But where years ago, if you separated, I think you didn't really know anybody else's business, nor was it anybody's business. But I do believe that a lot of times you need to be very aware, because getting a divorce, especially if you're younger or it's your first divorce, you don't realize all the complications that are ahead of you. And again, they may be worth it 100%. But again, on the other end, it may not be worth it at all. You just may have been in a moment in time in your life where you were going through something and you just wanted out, or it just was a bad time. And I think we've all had those situations with friends, family members, where you just sometimes need a break from that person, regardless if it's your brother, sister, mom, dad. I think sometimes we all just need a break from one another, and that could go for who you're married to as well. It's just something I thought people should think about when getting a divorce, because I don't think a lot of people really think about it in that way. I think they think, like I was saying originally, this sucks, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And again, if somebody is hurting you or somebody you don't want to be with, I get it 100%. But a lot of times I don't mean to say you're going through a phase, but it kind of is a phase. Because marriage is hard, and it's long. It's not months. It's not days, not months. It's not years, it's decades. It's a life. It's long. So you're going to have your ups and downs. I don't give a shit who you're with, because for the most part, I've seen so many people get a divorce and then get remarried. And a lot of times they sound more miserable in their second marriage compared to their first. And they end up getting another divorce. And I think statistically, more people end up getting a second divorce now than a first. And I can see that. And sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side. I'm just telling you that. And sometimes you just may need that break. You just don't want to admit it, or you don't want to give somebody else that break, because they may be coming to you and saying, listen, I don't know if I'm in love with you anymore, or I'm going through this or that. And you want to be the asshole to say, fine, I'm getting a divorce. You're, whatever, you want to lash out, or, you're whatever the situation is. There's a million of them. But I would really maybe take the time to listen to the other person. And if it's coming to that, like I said, first separate, and also give your mind a lot of time to think things through. Because when you're in the same household and miserable with one another, you're lashing out. Where if you separate, you will have the time now to really think things through clearly, what's best for everyone. That's just my opinion. All right, that's all I got for you. If you want to check out my Mastering Self-Confidence program, it's masteringselfconfidence.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I have a YouTube page, Rich CELENZA. So, hopefully you got something out of this. And I also have a book, Wingman. It's the ultimate guide to finding the woman of your dreams. I go through divorce in there as well, what I went through. And I really just want to help people through divorce more than anything else, because it is probably going to be one of the hardest things you ever go through in your life. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Take care and safe travels if you're traveling.